from Staten Island. I'm here today with Janelle and Shaniqua, and we're here to talk about Black Lives Matter. And we're hoping this is the beginning of a series of conversations to get people talking in their communities, in their families, in their places of work. We're looking to stimulate educated conversation so that this is a journey, and we invite all of you to come with us on this journey. We're going to start with Janelle, and then we'll get into some conversation with Shaniqua, and we're going to talk about what their experience has been and their background. So, Janelle, we're going to go straight to you. So, tell us what inspires you or what drives you to be a part of this movement?
Life has inspired me. Excuse me. Um, in high school, I watched the police, you know, whether it was a fight or just them trying to do crowd control. They were so rough with students. And, in high school, you're still kids. And I can remember hearing other kids, including myself, saying, hey, they're kids, like, take it easy. And they would just pepper spray you or they would throw you to the ground and they didn't care. Then in college, my boyfriend at the time, he got beat up by the police because he was on my campus after a certain time, even though he was there because I had invited him. I'm not going to say it was totally based on skin color, but I will say that I went to a school in a predominantly white area in a very nice way with a lot of what are called Jewish American princesses. Learned that term there. So he didn't fit in. And then now as an adult, you keep seeing the names. How many hashtags have we seen? And at a certain point, you almost become numb because you have to be. And then one of them hits you, like I was numb and then I heard Eric Garner was from Staten Island and it hit me. And then, you hear Philando Castile was in the car with kids and it hits you. And now you hear George Floyd and he called out for his mama. And I think it hit everybody because we were at a time in which we were all still enough to be able to really hear and feel what was going on.
Thank you for sharing that. Shaniqua, what drives you to be involved with the movement?
Hmm. I don't know. Basically, why do I get involved? I get involved because one, I feel I'm Black. So that's one reason to get involved. I haven't experienced, a lot of what Janelle may have experienced, but just watching the media over the years growing up, it was always something when it came to police brutality or racism, or when it comes to even the judicial system and how there we get the worst charges compared to them. But as I got older, me and Janelle, we went to the same college, so our school was predominantly white. And honestly speaking, I didn't really experience too much either. But coming out of college and you know again going back to the media and seeing what's going on in the world, and um, eventually having my son at the time that Eric Garner happened, I was a young mom. So I was thinking about my child, because we're Black. So he will one day be a Black man in America, and I don't need him to be a target just because of the simple fact that he's Black. So when that all happened with Trayvon Martin, and it's like we're attacking the children. I mean, Trayvon Martin is not the first child because it goes back even to like Emmett Till and prior to that. Um, it's like no one is safe. And then with things such as Sandra Bland, and where the women are being attacked, and it's like the women have always been attacked, and even back in the days when I guess I don't know, can't recall, don't quote me if it was slavery or not, but at one point they would be hanging pregnant mothers, So it's like I feel it's time for a change. It's a time where we have to fight and finally do what we need to do to have that change. And I'm, not like that we all need to be on one accord and have that solidarity to get to where we need to get to.
Well, yeah, Shaniqua, I like how you pointed out it's not gender specific, right? It crosses across both male and female,
Hmm.
and also it's not limited to age, right? So thinking about being involved, it's just such a wide spectrum of people who are Black who are involved in this. And so we're not limiting it to
Hmm.
gender or age for that matter. So yeah, I like how you pointed that out. So Janelle, thinking about, who's inspired you a little bit deeper, is there any reason why you continue? Thinking in terms of, has anyone inspired you to want to continue going forward?
My daughter, she unfortunately has been dealing with racism since she was very young. Like preschool, she was like 3, and they told her, no brown faces in the kitchen, and she didn't even understand. She goes, "Mom, I'm brown. What do you mean? I'm not black." Um, and then in elementary school, she got to the point in which she was fighting herself to want to take off her skin. And I've had to work very hard to instill in her pride of being a black girl. She goes to school with that is mostly white. She goes to school on the other side of Staten Island, and Staten Island in itself is a microcosm for the rest of at least our country, right? It's very divided, and she goes to school closer towards the South Shore, and she's had to, hear mean things there too. Granted, they have really good educators at her school, so they do nip it in the bud, but it's still there. And I can't change the world by myself, but if I don't at least try to fight for it, how can I expect her to keep standing up?
Right. Excellent. Yeah. I mean, children are so often our inspiration on why we see this through, knowing that this is just the middle. This is not even the beginning. We're in the middle of something and we don't know what the future is going to look like through this process. So this is definitely
Mm-hmm.
a new movement, but it's not new. It's not that new, right?
No, no.
So
No.
Shaniqua, yeah, yeah, exactly. Shaniqua, tell us about your experience. I know that you've been involved in your own way trying to educate others, and also give us some insight into how you've also gotten your son involved.
Um, ooh. I mean, as far as inciting people, I try to post along across my different social media platforms. I don't really use Twitter too much, but I'm heavily on like Facebook and Instagram. And if there's certain things that I see and I agree with, I repost it. Or if it's something that I'm feeling, I post it. Um, and then you have to have those conversations with like your friends. I know there was a lot of time, and like even your colleagues and work and things. But when I go to work, it was a lot of conversations that we would have in regards to it. And it's interesting because I work with the minority, and it's not just blacks, it's everyone across the board, and they all tend to have the same views. And um it's like I try to, you know if I hear something that I feel is incorrect, I try to correct them on that. It could be a simple comment like, it seemed to be a tough subject on a job recently as to where we were discussing the movement, and how the media, they tend to have deflected from the cause, and it was all focused on the rioters and the looters. And then somebody made a comment and was like, well, if they're going to be looting, then why don't they go back to their country? But it's so funny because it's not, that person is not from here either. So it's like, for you to say that, it's like incorrect, one, in so many ways. And it's not even just the fact of the rioting and the looting, it's a whole lot of other things going on. We've been oppressed for so many years. It's like we don't get the same treatment. Our finances are not the same. It's a whole lot of things that's involved as to why these people are acting out. Like, we're being killed out here. So if you're so concerned about a building being burnt down, then that's not the focus. I feel you could always replace the building, but you can't replace these people that's losing their lives. So, that's just one way as far as, correcting those who may see things slightly different, get them not to get, try to, I'm not all about convincing people to see things my way or getting them to understand. It's all about getting them to try to understand, basically. And aside from that part of it, I tend um, it took me a while, but I started to go to the marches. I mean, I haven't been in a couple of weeks, but um, I was a little concerned from work and being in the hospital and having the whole COVID thing because I feel like that's another issue we facing that as well, and that's also hitting the Black community hard. And it was like, okay, do I go out there and march because I don't know what all these have this in close proximity? And I'm sitting here like, well, if I survived working in the hospital all this time, I could survive the protests. So I, saw the bigger picture, and I decided to take it upon myself to go out there when I can. If it wasn't every day, it was every other day or every couple of days, even if I had a sign or not. And, there were a couple of them where I did take my son. I took him to a couple of children marches, one in Von King Park in Brooklyn. They walked around the park a couple of times. We somewhat missed that, but they had a rally. So it was other children that were speaking. And it was so heartbreaking because it was one little girl that caught my attention, and she just kept saying, I will change the world one day. And she was like, I am not afraid. I will change the world one day. And she just kept repeating it. And she said maybe slightly a few other things, but that was what stuck. And in the midst of her talking, she was like 9, 10 years old, not even, and she just started crying. And they had to console her. But it's like hard when we see these babies being affected by this. And it's like we have to continue this fight. And then one of the children marches that happened in Manhattan, we started over by Herald Square, and we walked over to the New York Public Library. That one didn't draw as much attention as it was Warriors of the Garden that did that one, but they had one in Brooklyn that was around the New York Public Library, and that had a huge turnout. But I missed that one, so I went to the one in Manhattan. It was a lot smaller, but we shut down traffic. Looking up, what was this, Sixth Ave, I think it was, and it was so cute with them and their little signs and saying Black Lives Matter and things of that nature. It wasn't just Black children out there; it was all children. And we got to the library, and long and short of it, the first march that we went to, my son was afraid to speak. He wanted to say something, and I was like, Jay, I didn't raise you to be afraid. If you have something to say, speak your mind. And he was like, no, mommy, I'm nervous. I'm like, but it's no different than you performing in a school play. But he's like, that's different because I know those people. But I'm like, you don't know their families. But aside from that, he went up there and he blew me away in regards to everything that he had to say. And I was just like, wow, coming from a child, and it's like you don't know where their mind is. And I was like, I want my son to be able to voice himself, let them know how you feel. And he kept talking about don't back down, don't let them um bully you. And it was so much that came out of his mouth. I can't recall all of it, but it's just things like that that makes me want to keep moving because I know he has to grow up. And like we mentioned before, these children, are getting hurt too. How many children have gotten shot? Like even with the police targeting the parents, the children getting shot, or somebody racist attacking whomever. Like it's just a lot. So we just need to, this is why I get involved and what I sit there and try to do. And hopefully I just hope that everything doesn't die down and we just continue to fight, in all honesty,
Okay.
because it's
Yeah,
far from over.
definitely far from over. And the fact that, you get your son involved means that it can continue. That's what we're looking to do, is have this conversation to continue through the youth, because at a certain point, they have to step up and realize this is their future. they have to get involved, and encouraging him so young, it's a great start, and it's a fabulous way to help with his self-esteem and his confidence, because it is scary.
Exactly.
It's scary to get out there, but you know what? The more you do it, the easier it gets. So,
Right.
and
Despite feet hurting, this he complains too. Excuse me. He like, mommy,
yeah.
why we out here? Mommy, my feet hurt. But I'm like, Jaden, it's for a reason. And then they hear him speak. I'm like, you completely
Right.
understand what's going on. And I've been watching these children marches across, and these children are so powerful in how they voice their opinion, even the signs that they're holding up and they're creating when they go to these things. Our babies are like they're the next generation and the next leaders, and it seems like they're ready. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? And it's like
Yeah,
only thing we can do is pave the way, and hopefully it continues.
absolutely, absolutely. So, to Janelle, what would you like to see happen in the future?
I, you know, they're giving us everything we have been asked for, right? They're giving us street names. They're painting Black Lives Matter on the street. They're changing commercials. They're blacking out TV shows for various reasons if they feel like it may have unintended racism there. But what they haven't really done, I mean, I saw something where I think in New York today, they're trying to pass some laws, right? But they haven't given us a lot of laws to protect us against police brutality. They haven't given us, on the federal level, on the state level, on the city level, protection. They chip away at Black protections and make them minority protections. But, whenever it's a minority, somehow the African American population gets left out. Somehow it's okay that everybody else benefits but us. Somehow, everybody goes to school and does better but us. Somehow everybody opens up businesses in our own neighborhoods but us. And everybody just assumes that it's because, Black people are so lazy, we don't care. I mean, I seen something the other day that said, they've been calling African Americans lazy ever since we stopped working for free or free. It's true. So it was like, we don't want to work for free, so now we're lazy. No. I'm not saying like everybody else, yes, there are lazy people, but you can't label a whole race just lazy. Before the Mexicans came, it was Black people who stood by the road to look for contract work. That was our job. We did that. We were migrant workers. We did that. When we were first freed as slaves, that's, sharecropping. We did that. Do we want professional jobs? Yes. But do we get them? We don't get them. I mean, some, enough to fill their quotas, but not enough to be able to have influence, to be able to make a difference, to be able to pull ourselves in the same way all those other closed door meetings happen, in the same way nepotism is very strong in this country and many businesses, but we don't get to present that. We don't get to do that. And, in some ways it's okay, because if we get to own our own, then we can do it too. But without certain policies created, without laws being created, without protection, affirmative action, yeah, I still want it because we don't have enough Black doctors. I still want it because we don't have enough Black lawyers. We don't have enough Black CEOs. They always put us as a president of the diversity section, but they don't put us as their CEO, vice president. And if they do, we usually have to whitewash ourselves so much that there's barely anything left for us to be able to reach back into our communities and help anybody else, because we try to sever all ties and fully assimilate before you'll let us elevate. And it's not fair. Nobody else is asked to give up their culture and their community for success, right? But Black people are, time and time and time again. So when you say, what do I want? The radical in me is like, I want to burn it all down and build it back up. When they were rioting, I was like, yeah, burn it all down. But if it's all burnt down and there's all ash and there's no plan, then all you have is burnt and you don't have anything to build. So I want organization. I want policy. I want real changes. And I want to at least start the process to really letting our country heal. And I think right now as much as our current president, you know, he's ripped off a lot of Band-Aids, right? That's why we're hurting so bad. That's why some stuff is so ugly, because it's stuff that we've been sweeping under the rug. We swept it and swept it and swept it. We don't want to talk about it. We don't address it. You know, racism is now very like passive aggressive racism. Usually it's not the blatant, but he's bringing out blatant racism, which is good. I prefer blatant racism. Smack me in my face, spit at me, let me know you don't like me, rather than, you know, behind a closed door will say, oh, not her, she's not that type. I'd rather the blatant. At least then I know how to address it. At least then as a nation we can address it. And so I think going forward, what we really need is leadership, because we don't really have any, but it doesn't have to be singular leadership, because singular leadership is dangerous. We've seen it. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, they tear down
everything. Yes, I agree.
Sorry.
I agree. You say it all, you hitting it all, and everything is going through my head, you spitting it out. Thank you.
I'm sorry, but you know, we need like a coalition.
It's okay. Just
some kind of policies. We need togetherness, and like today, you know,
Blackout Tuesday.
We're trying, right? Blackout Tuesday. It's the 7th.
National Economic
There is
Blackout.
no guarantee that many people are doing this, right? Because some of the steam is dying down, because it's not as, you know, cool to do it. It's really easy to black out your screen and say, I blacked out. It's a lot harder to say, don't spend any money just for one day, but it's hard because, you know, here in New York, nail salons open, so everybody needs to go get their nails done. But we have to kind of get strong, you know. People keep saying, I'm not my ancestors, but maybe we need to pull from our ancestors, because at least they knew how to take over a year, and they didn't have buses. And that was when people didn't have cars that much. So they were walking to work. They were carpooling to work. They were making their communities connected. Our community is so broken that it is hard for us to do something together, because we don't even know each other. I don't know my neighbors.
I don't know my neighbors.
You know what I mean? I don't know them. Growing up, I did. I lived in a house. I knew people on my block. I knew my area, but I don't know my neighbors. Now I moved into an apartment. I don't know these people. And honestly, in some ways, I don't want to, but I guess I should, because they are my neighbors. And that's the only way that we can build that community. You know, it used to be you could go to knock down the door and ask your neighbor to keep an eye on your kid while you ran to the store. You can't do that now, because you don't know them. You're not going to ask them because they're a stranger. So that's another thing I want. I want us to rebuild our own community. You know, we have to fix some of our own stuff at the same time when we're asking them to fix things. You know, right now the crime rate is high, but it's not just the Black community, but that's where they want to shine the light about how crime rate is high. But when you have people in poverty, what do you expect? They don't have anything. Why do you think they were stealing when they were rioting? If you don't have anything, you have to grasp at the few chances that you have to have something. You know, you look at it all day and you can never touch it. You can never have it. And when you walk in the store, if you have enough money, they tell you you don't deserve it still. So then it's like, cool, I could stick it to you by robbing you and just taking it. All right, I'm going to do that. And let's not pretend like all of those stores don't have insurance money coming to them for anything that was broken. Nobody lost except the insurance companies. And that's the same reason why we have to get those lobbyists out of Washington, because big business is what's controlling all of our policies, and the people are not. So that's
the top 3% right there.
I want the people.
And we're going to stop there, because we could go on a whole other conversation about the economics and the political aspect. But what I love is just we really captured a little snapshot of all of it, you know, looking at policies, looking at politics, talking about leadership, family, community, everything that needs to be rebuilt. So we're kind of breaking down structures and looking to rebuild it, make it more firm, make it more concrete. So I want to thank both of you, and I look forward to doing this again.